Cunts, vaginas, and Vestal virgins. Cunt, well, a lot of people think cunt means vagina, and perhaps that's one of the meanings. It's little known, most people don't understand that the word cunt actually comes from the word cuntilingus, meaning the beginning in oneness. Where am I here? Okay. Fuck, motherfucker, and such words have come a long way in the last 30-40 years. But the word cunt seems to be lost in the archives of our mind. And it, oh, excuse me. Cunt. Yeah, cunt somehow has had a bad rap. It's not a word we use because it seems to have dark connotations, which may be a little bit unfair to the word, to what most of us like to think what it is. Of course, the vagina. And the vagina is, of course, just a part of a woman. And like a penis could be called a cock. You can say cock without anybody getting too upset. What else can you call a penis? Prick. Prick, you can say prick. But cunt just hasn't really worked its way in to our everyday vocabulary. Part of this reason could be because of the connotations we get from the word cunt. And that may have to do a lot with, surprisingly enough, agriculture. Because back about 10,000 years, man changed his concept of woman, and back then we were hunters and gatherers, and woman was an important part of the community. She was holy. She was God. Woman was God. She was resurrection. But then came time when man started taking over the planet piece by piece, and war and plunder became more important than women and children. And this started our whole. This made woman something other than what she was. And it made the concept of cunt somehow a little bit more hard. When we left. And part of the reason might be because we were a lot simpler animals back in the jungle. We were surrounded by magic. I mean, when we lived in forest, we were always among other animals and among other life, and we knew that the sun mattered to us, and the moon mattered to us. All of life mattered to us, and woman being life, of course, she mattered to us as well. And that changed when we left the jungles to become apart from the rest of it, and started building our own worlds with lights and supermarkets and shopping malls and highways and cars and airplanes and trains, and everything became more of a machine. And slowly, women have been suffering for thousands of years because of men's hatefulness towards it. And it wasn't too long after monotheistic, tyrannical theocracy, dictatorships. We still get forms of that now. It wasn't too long after the start of this that there were laws made against women. Women were no longer allowed to speak. If they wanted to say something, you could say something to their husband who owned them at home. They weren't allowed to speak in church or synagogue or mosque. They weren't allowed to have the vote. Nobody was allowed to have the vote up until recently, but women even longer. The whole idea of, what did you call it, democracy, that's a funny one. But we're not going to call it about democracy. But democracy was first for men and later for women. And women were used to make babies. They were our baby producing machines. And the babies, of course, were produced so that we could have soldiers and slaves. And this system is still part of our system. We don't have as much war as we used to, but still we are workers and fighters, and we're always stealing from somebody. Quite often the soldiers just have to stand there and the big corporation goes in and robs the place. But if there's any fighting, it's the women and children who suffer the most. And okay, we're going to get away from cunt for a little bit and get to the idea of virginity. And why is virginity a question? And why is it that a man can have sex before marriage and it doesn't matter, whereas a woman has it, and then she's not as sellable when she has it? And I mean, part of that could have been because the kings like to have the first kid, but we have less king influence now, and we also have birth control. So the whole concept of women not having sex before marriage, if there ever was a purpose to it, there certainly isn't anymore. It's just a crazy notion. And one of the things we did recently, I mean within the last few thousand years, is we made an icon out of virginity. The great Holy Mother Mary was supposedly, although she was raped by a lord, probably Lord Herod, she was the great virgin icon who had the little baby Jesus who saved the world from their sins. Nobody really knows what that means, but it's a story, the story that says the virgin is holy. Well, the virgin doesn't mean anything. It just means somebody who hasn't had sex yet. And there's no magic to it. And which takes us on to the Vestal Virgin. There were the Roman Empire, probably not the first. And there's even an image of this in Washington. The eternal fire was tended to by Vestal virgins, which meant they were taking care of this fire that was not allowed to go out, and they were not allowed to even think about sex, and they were not allowed to lose their virginity, or they would be killed for losing their virginity. And so you gotta wonder about that. I mean, I hope you do wonder about that. And then we'll skip right along. We're a bit confused today because this is so overwhelming. Fire. Why was it that these Vestal virgins had to keep this eternal fire? Well, maybe so it wouldn't go out and we'd always have fire, but we've got lots of matches now. We don't have to worry about an eternal fire. But the eternal fire is symbolic, and it is symbolic of the one true God. Now, there's many people would say, what are you talking about? But if you look at enough religions, enough mythology, and take it back to the core, and you can especially see this, I think, in the Torah and in Deuteronomy, more than maybe other chapters, but you can see it everywhere. Fire. Burn this, burn that. A fire going before the hordes of Moses. It was always fire. The basic ritual was fire, and there's lots of reasons for it. I mean, fire did change our way of life. I mean, fire was the start of the universe. Fire is the sun. Fire is all the stars are fire. And out of this fire came the planet Earth. And of course, with the fire of the sun, there is life on Earth. So it makes almost a little bit of sense to have some reverence for fire. But fire is not an entity that thinks. It's beyond thinking, and it does not even know. It doesn't have knowing. It doesn't know that we're here. It makes no sense to worship fire, which means none of our religions make any sense because they're all based on fire. Now, you can contradict me if you please, but you're going to have to go read and do your research before. Otherwise, I won't have any argument with you. So, did we miss anything out? God is fire. Oh, we'll just wrap it up with vaginas, okay? Every woman has a vagina. It's her evolution given right to have a vagina, and it is her evolutionary given right to do with it as she pleases. For the vagina belongs to the woman, and man does not have a right to own woman. It's a concept from our crazy religions, from our crazy death cults, from our belief that there is a God that gives us a God-given right to hate women and put them below men. But it's all a game. It's all a bad game, and it's a game that we have to bring to an end, or else we're never going to progress. We should be equal with women if we're lucky. I mean, women are evolutionary. They're ahead of us. Men are actually behind women. There are men who are just as clever women. I'm not saying that men are stupider, but men tend to be more aggressive and violent. And sure, there's exceptions with what was her name? Maggie Thatcher. She was pretty scary. But anyway, we're going to leave it at that. This is partly going out. I mean, if I put cunts and vaginas in the search words, people in the Middle East will find it, oddly enough. Because that's what they're interested in. They pretend they're not, but if you look, where do the search words, what are they searching for in which countries? Vagina is one of the key ones in Saudi Arabia. Is that true? Why? I don't know. Maybe they're curious. What is a vagina? What's it doing here? Well, it's just part of a woman, and it's where pleasure is derived, and it is where babies come out of. So that's your story about vagina. Be nice to vaginas, and be nice to penises too, but have some respect for vaginas. We've been very disrespectful the last 5,000 or 10,000 years, and we need to smarten up, or we're going to be in big trouble with the women. All right? Have a really fucking nice day, cunt.